People need hope here. Something to believe in.
Last one standing wins.
You think I am afraid of you?
You should be.
I feel something. A slight tingle in my fingers. I think it's affecting me.
There are 3 things I love more than anything: my wife, my unborn child, and The Lord of the Rings. When I first heard that there was an animated Lord of the Rings movie coming out, you best believe I was going to watch that. And to be honest, I just wasn't that satisfied. However, it wasn't necessarily that bad. There were a few scenes I quite enjoyed, but the majority of it felt like they were disrespecting Tolkien's lore. Anything with the Lord of the Rings logo spanked onto that thing is going to have some high expectations. And this movie just doesn't quite hit that for me. Let me tell you why. Like and subscribe for more videos. This movie made some really bad choices when it came to the lore of Middle-earth specifically. I'm not going to be talking about the major plot moments in this movie, but I'm going to be talking about the filler around that. So if you're sensitive to spoilers, I'll just suggest that you put this video on mute and just put it in the background or something. Now you guys know that I'm a stickler when it comes to Tolkien's lore. So what they did with the eagles was absolutely unbelievable. At the beginning, you pan over the mountains with the Riders of the Rohirrim theme song playing in the background. And I was getting some pretty deep chills here. They came out with a pretty strong opening, I'm not going to lie. Then right after that, we zoom into Hera on a horse with the narrator saying she could ride before she could walk. I don't know how that's possible. Hera literally stops at the edge of a cliff and tosses the eagles a roast chicken like she's feeding the pigeons at the park.
Roast chicken?
If this was a separate universe from Middle-earth, then I could care less about the giant eagles. But given what we know about these eagles specifically, this is just not necessary and not how Tolkien wanted them to be used. Tolkien has said that the eagles are a dangerous machine whom he has used sparingly, and this is the absolute limit of their usefulness. With all this eagle talk out of the way, I should give credit where it's due. All of the major landmark locations like Rohan and Helm's Deep are pretty much identical to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, which was awesome to see in animation. I also appreciate that the story of Helm Hammerhand was portrayed fairly accurately. But every other character's story just makes the movie less good, because the creators of this movie are trying to do something that they think is better than the lore. But that's just like playing God, because you can't just expect to be better than someone in their own universe. That just doesn't make any sense to me. In the books, Hera is only known as Helm's daughter, so I do think it was appropriate to give her a name, but I don't think that she should have been the main character. That doesn't mean I'm against powerful women or anything. There's quite a few powerful women in Tolkien's lore, but her being the main character just took away from the best parts of the movie, which was Helm Hammerhand himself. This really is his story, so he should be the main character. But every film these days needs to have some sort of girl boss of some sort, so there you go, I guess. Now that the lore's out of the way, I'm going to try to go full critic mode and just think about this movie in terms of how the movie actually is instead of the lore itself. Starting with the plot and the pacing, this movie feels like they were having a hard time fitting everything into this 2-hour time slot. It was fast paced, but it didn't really take away anything from the rest of the movie. It just felt a little crammed is all. It might have only felt fast because the entire movie is just a flat out war or a siege. For the most part, the pacing was fairly good. It followed the Freytag pyramid, so there's no complaints there. However, I found myself getting zoned out and distracted during one of the major battle scenes. And maybe that's because everything was moving too fast, or maybe it's just because I didn't get enough sleep the night before. It could be either one. The core plot was fairly good too. It provided us with the background of the characters, the catalyst, and the motivations for each character, even if most of the characters were poorly written. The characters are where it gets a little juicy for me. I'm going to list for you all the characters that are portrayed well. Helm Hammerhand, Freylaf, and Haleth. I didn't really care that much about anyone else. Helm Hammerhand really should have been the main character in this movie. It just made more sense. The most entertaining scenes was when Helm was the focal point. He was also the character that did most of the heavy lifting for the major events that happened. Freylaf was probably the only man in the movie that wasn't portrayed as an absolute imbecile. And he was only seen in the movie like 3 times. I liked Haleth's character mainly because he serves the right purpose for the little amount of time he has on screen. He does play a pretty flat character, so there's not much depth to him. But he plays a critical role that influences the motivations of other characters. Some of the characters really got me riled up because the movie is trying to portray a point that has already been done before, and is really getting old. By making all the men a bunch of smooth-brained idiots, and giving all the women a PhD in being right all the time. Now I'm all for powerful women, but just don't skew an already perfect story to prove a point. That's why I liked Freylaf so much, because he was the only man that wasn't the fat loser with body odor, and he was banished for it. That probably would be my biggest complaint about this movie. I'm just tired of seeing changes made to great stories just due to political agendas. For example, Wolf is the main antagonist, and he also has an advisor to assist him with war strategies and stuff. Every time his advisor advises him on anything, he literally does the exact opposite every single time.
girl is clever. She is up to something. Do not take the bait.
I accept your challenge!
Right when you think he's going to make a rational decision, the chain of stupidity continues. He never once listened to his advisor, and it was kind of just getting ridiculous and predictable. I feel the need to circle back around to the visuals again because I feel like I've ripped into this movie quite enough here. And it does deserve a bit of praise in this department. If you're into anime, the animation style will be right up your alley. And it really is comforting, almost like watching a Studio Ghibli film. And they use the same type of tactics that anime uses, where they convey the type of character based on the size of their eyes. And somehow that works pretty well. The visuals were actually created using a combination of 2D animation, CG models, and collaboration with artists from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They used detailed CG models of the characters and layouts, and assembled a layout in Unreal Engine. They would choose shots and cuts from this, and assemble a rough cut. This served as a base for the motion capture director who would film actors. Then it all went to the animators, who used that to do the animation. They definitely worked like a mad dog to get the visuals looking good and accurate to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But they also used motion capture as a time saver for the deadline they had to hit, which is why the animation does look a little choppy. I bet if they had a little more time, they would be able to make the animation look a lot better than it already did. I don't think that there will ever be anything as good as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, ever again. And there is many reasons for that, but time constraints is one of them. After leaving the theater, I did feel quite disappointed. And maybe that's because my expectations are high, but they're high for a reason. The stories in Tolkien's lore need to be treated with care and adapted in a nurturing way. A way that pays respect to the lore of Tolkien's universe that he created. This film does not really hit that mark. The visuals are probably the best part of the movie, so if that's all you really care about, then by all means, just take a gander of the movie in theaters. The biggest mistake that this movie made though was that it was just boring and a big slog. I was nearly falling asleep halfway through, and the theater was emptier than a freshly bought pack of fuzzy peaches. If I was to rate this on Rotten Tomatoes, I'd give this a 50%. And if I was rating it on IMDb, I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. Swap your thoughts in the comments below of what you think of War of the Rohirrim. I've swapped my thoughts, and if you want to see my thoughts on how to defeat the Smile monster from the Smile movies, then click right up here, and I'll see you on the other side.
What do they say? He can't hold his liquor.